Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. We're focused on talking to food and beverage brands that are on a mission to make the world better.
Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. I'm your host, Duncan Alney, where we speak to leading entrepreneurs and CEOs and founders of mission-driven food and beverage brands. And this episode is brought to you by Firebelly, a company I helped found. At Firebelly, we make brands more likable and profitable through social media marketing. That's all we do, literally all the time, 100% social media marketing. We've been voted the top social media marketing firm on Clutch. Firebelly's help clients like Netflix, Qdoba, Fiji Water, and many others transform their social media marketing. So if you want to make your brand more likable and profitable, let's talk firebellymarketing.com. And I got to say, I am so very excited about my guest today. So I've known him for a very long time. We've worked together on things. We've worked on the agency side, on the client side, and all different kinds of perspectives. And with no further ado, Steve Hershberger. Welcome, Steve.
Man, I am so glad to be here. Our merry-go-round of life has been a real joy, Duncan, and to be invited to your podcast is truly an honor. So thank you, man.
Well, thank you, Steve. And Steve, you are a very prolific man. And tell us the name of the company that you're heading up today. I know it's a consulting firm, and is it Westminster Group?
It's Westminster Innovation Group. It's a little boutique a consulting firm that focuses on innovation in food and beverage. So, as you know, I've played in the food and beverage space for a bit of time. And it's something that I'm pretty passionate about helping get right. It's real simple. Westminster, like the bridge, westminsterinnovation.com. And yes, I came up with a name as I was walking across that bridge in London. So not really creative, but inspirational.
Well, and I think when I think of you and I think of Westminster Bridge, I think they're both reliable. They've both been around. And they're both taking you from one place to a different place. I mean, I think when I think of you, I think of sort of an entrepreneurial adventurer or an adventurous entrepreneur. You have wholeheartedly with courage attacked different spaces. I mean, you advised firms from startups to Fortune 500 firms, and you've done so many different things. I know that you were a founding member in the social media industry. You're still, even 10 years out of word of mouth, you're still a highly respected person in the word of mouth space. You've been involved with starting a brewery. You've worked on the tech side of the beverage industry, and now you're doing this innovation work with your consultancy. Let me ask you this: what is it, if you were going to say in 2 or 3 words, what is it that drives this adventurous spirit, Steve?
Curiosity. So it's curiosity. Curiosity without discipline is, there's a bumper sticker that says all who are wandering are not lost. And the difference between being lost and wandering is really having an understanding where you are and where you want to go, and experiencing the joy of the journey and the unexpected surprises along the way. The loss is just being bloody freaking lost and stumbling around trying to get from one place to another. Curiosity to me is hugely important, but also, a number of years ago, I got the religion of discipline and methodology. And so it's in terms of approaches that we really believe in. And it's what drives results, man.
Well, thank you. That is a wonderful answer, in the fact that, the curiosity and the discipline that goes with it. It's like, taking it to the next level. And speaking of taking it to the next level, Steve, I want to congratulate you and tell our listeners that you have basically invented flavor profile analysis that allows, among other things, innovation and product development to be tied to product and consumer taste rather than just quote unquote simple branding. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what is the that's something you've done. Like, what inspired you to go out and do that?
Man, his experience. So at the when we first started the brewery, Duncan, it was interesting. One day I'm in a bar, right? So this is not a joke, but that's how they all start. So man walks into the bar. That man happens to be me. And I'm looking around, and so I was always wondering why so many taps, and what was on tap, and then what caused a beer to become popular. And so this is back to our social roots, right? What drove trends? Why did something go viral, right? And so I started looking around. I'm in this bar, and I'm seeing something, and I hop up on the bar stool, and I have my glass, and I have a fork, and I bang it on it, and there's like 45 people in the bar at the time, and everybody stops, and the bartender is just like glaring me daggers because I've asked him some questions in the past, and he didn't really like the questions and answers. So this guy, he was a huge fan of IPAs, and so they had 12 taps, and out of those 12 taps, 7 of them were IPAs. And so I'm banging on my glass, I get everybody's attention. And I said, let me ask everybody a question. Who here is drinking beer? And out of those 40 something people, probably a little over half, 28%, 28 of them were drinking beer. The rest were drinking something else. And I said, how many of you that are drinking beer are drinking an IPA? And about half of them raised their hand. The other half were drinking bottled beer. And I said, so out of you, how many of you really love IPAs? And about half of them again. So you have about now 6 or 7 people out of 40 that go, I really love IPAs. So then I turn to the bartender and I go, why the hell do you have 7 out of 10 or 7 out of 12 of your taps at one beer? And he looks at me and he said, because IPAs are hot. And I said, dude, you should have 2. The rest of them are clones. And so I hopped off the bar, and he said, what do you mean clones? And I said, all these other 5 beers are doing is cannibalizing the sale of the 2 hot ones. I said, you're wasting money. And he goes, can I say fuck on the show? I can't. So he goes, F you. He goes, fuck you, get out. Right. And so that was the day that in the back of my mind, I started thinking brands are driven not always by brand, but by people's taste. And I'm going to take it off food and beverage for a minute to make it. So if you're a dude and you like bedazzled jeans with pockets, with buttons and rhinestones down the sides, you've got a specific taste. Are you going to like Levi 505s?
No way.
No way. Are you going to like Rockin' Republic?
I don't know it. I don't know that brand.
Bedazzled jeans.
Okay.
Right. People have taste profiles, and the taste profile is either amplified by the belief in the brand based on 3 things. Awareness must equal expectation, must equal experience. Those 3 things have to be in harmony and balance all the time. If they are, and the expectation and experience and even the awareness align with your taste profile in terms of your brand messaging, you got to win, right? So you start thinking of food and beverage, and so the question is, where in the mix is the product? Is it in the messy middle? Is it in a noisy space? So are you screaming, hey, I'm not a me too, I'm not a me too, when you're a me too? So how do you differentiate that? Well, you do that by aligning taste profile with your product profile, flavor profile in this instance.
It's interesting. I know that you for years have set to me and to others. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's to me like the way the bartender looked at those 12 taps, let me blindly follow some gut instinct I have based on some half-assed data that I saw somewhere, as opposed to saying, okay, who's coming to my bar and what do they like, right? And so I guess I'm asking you, like, let's talk a little bit about that, about looking at things differently and how they change when you look at them differently.
That you mentioned that's a quote that was attributed to Max Planck, and Max Planck was affectionately known as the father of quantum physics. Well, he said that weird stuff happens at a really small level, and Einstein goes, yeah, no, it doesn't. Well, as it turns out, Planck was right. Quantum is a very real thing. And so in making the statement, he was actually attributing that quote to another guy named Heisenberg, but that's a different story. But the point there is, if you look at the world through a different lens or a different perspective, what you will see will be very different than what you expect to see. And sometimes it's like I said, change your latitude, change your attitude. And so what you have to do is look at the problem from an entirely different vantage point. So I'll give you an example. We've done some work for a global dominant confection brand. It's a chocolate company that everybody in the world knows, right? And they came to us and said, we have too many SKUs. We need to cut them. We need to do SKU rationalization, SKU optimization. And we said, okay, that's a pretty easy problem. What are you thinking? And they said, we have to start with chocolate covered strawberries. We hate chocolate covered strawberries, and we hate them for a whole bunch of reasons. And we said, all right, well, tell us why you hate chocolate covered strawberries. They don't sell. They're a pain in the ass. You got to, depending on the season, you got to source them from 5 different countries. They're perishable, so we got to ship them fast, and there's not enough margin in it. We don't want to sell. And we went, okay. So looking at it on the surface, you see that as the bad guy. Yes, kill it, right? So validate for us that it sucks. And we went, okay, so you're wanting to solve the problem from the inside out, because you have a bias that these things aren't working. Do you have too many SKUs? Absolutely. But let's take a look before we decide what to kill. So we ran the analysis through Amplify, which is our box tool, really more of a gray box. But the net result, we came back to him and said, you don't want to kill chocolate covered strawberries. Well, they don't sell. No, you're right. They don't, but you don't want to kill them. Well, why? And we said, well, here's why. Because they are what's called a generation 0 magnet. Well, what does that mean? All right. And so that was the question. And we said, all right, here's the answer. You go to McDonald's and you're in line at McDonald's, and you went to McDonald's because you want the kale salad. You're thinking about ordering the kale salad in line because you're wanting to be healthy. You get to the counter and they say, what we have? And you go, I'll have a Big Mac with cheese and fries. And they went, yeah, okay. So what's the point? And I said, the point is that the chocolate covered strawberries on your digital site are driving traffic. People intend to buy them, but when they get there, they transfer chocolate covered strawberries to the other 10 things that they want. If you get rid of chocolate covered strawberries in terms of promotion on your website, your market basket will drop by nearly 28%. What do we do? You market chocolate covered strawberries. You carry very little inventory because you won't need it.
That's amazing. So really, like, Steve, am I right in saying that what you did there was you removed their bias through analysis and learning? You removed their bias, correct?
Well, bias, everybody, you can't remove a bias because it's like a birthmark, right? It's there. It just is. And so, but you can work around it. And you work around it by illuminating the otherwise invisible. So what you want to do is you want to show why those things work. So I'll give you another example. So we were doing a proof of concept for a very large liquor company. It has a red label, starts with an S, makes vodka. And so what they wanted to do is, so the FMBs at the time were growing not only in popularity, but they were replicating like rabbits, right? Every time you turned around, there's a new FMB. By the way, have you seen the newest FMB that Pabst Blue Ribbon put out? It's alcoholic coffee.
I have.
In a can. Have you had it?
No, I'm curious.
No. Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about orphans. So orphans in the product extension queue, people. So teams, when you're talking about bias, teams believe louder is better. It's like in the movie Spinal Tap, it goes up to 11, right? Why? Because it can. The unending extension of SKU proliferation creates this thing called paradox of choice. Paradox of choice is a very real thing, which means that the consumer gets overwhelmed with all of the choices and that they default back to the basic. What they know is already what they bought, right? So you have these orphans in the long tail in the product mix, and these are these product extensions that shouldn't exist, and because of that, they're not selling. Well, they're in the market, they're being manufactured. That just doesn't happen magically. And so what that means is the other products that this brand is selling have to subsidize the ones that are not performing, right? And so that's the orphan. The clone is the 5 IPAs that didn't need to be on tap. So when you come from it from the outside in, you can look at flavor profiles and determine what's selling. So back to the vodka example. Turns out, if you look at the flavor profile across category, and I can show you data set to prove this out, that red berry seltzer is in the same, what we call sub neighborhood of the flavor profile family as a certain rosé wine. And when you merchandise, that's manufactured by an entirely different company, right? And when you merchandise the red berry seltzer next to the rosé wine, the red berry seltzer sales go up by almost 200%. Or another example, turns out that certain imperial IPAs, their flavor profile is actually closer to rye whiskey than it is to other beers like Pilsners. So when you're looking at flavor profiling, you can take two dissimilar products, knowing that consumer's taste, whether it's the taste with the tongue or it's the other 4 senses, aligns with that product. So if they like one, they're going to like another. If you like the bedazzled jeans, you're going to love the Western style bedazzled shirt.
Steve, how often do brands actually do this? Like, especially like retail, like let's say like a Fresh Market or a Whole Foods. Is this the type of analysis they're doing? Because it doesn't seem like it. It seems like shit is just like organized alphabetically or price-wise. It's not organized by what you might like. It's not, I mean, and maybe music is really smart like that, right? Because smart record stores will say, recommend it if you like. If you like the Byrds, you're probably going to like the Flying Burrito Brothers.
Yeah, Spotify's smart like that.
Yes.
Pandora is smart like that. Expedia is smart like that. Amazon is smart like that. The firms that are Google is smart like that. The firms that are really in the data and advertising business. So open your wallet, take money out. Even Netflix is smart like that. Disney is smart like that. They understand generally or implicitly how it works, but they don't. But some of them understand the mathematical models. Some of them are pretty good, and it's not traditional models. It's information theory, algebraic topology, graph theory. So it's more advanced mathematics that allow you to think about how stuff in space works. So if you think of a galaxy, like you got a picture of the Milky Way, right? So all of these stars, right? If you look and you zone in and you say, all right, so we have a spiral galaxy, and here's this little spiral arm over here. That's like a neighborhood in a flavor profile, right? Because a galaxy is three-dimensional. And so you zone in on that neighborhood and you're like, all right, all of the stars in there are somewhat alike. And then you look at two of the stars and you're like, oh, or the clusters, and you're like, oh, they're getting closer together. So you start measuring the distance between them. And as they start getting closer together, those clusters are more alike, right? So you're not measuring things, you're measuring distance between things. And when you start thinking about characteristics and attributes of products, foods, flavors, flavor categories, nutritional elements, sales velocity, all that goes into the galaxy. And as they start to move closer together, you can identify things that either don't exist and that should, or that do exist and need to change. Give you another example. Work with a brand to develop a breakfast food, and the company, which makes coffee, and it's not from Seattle. They're known for certain sweet, really round products, right?
You might say America runs on them.
Yeah, America apparently does run a company like that. Well, what they wanted to do was to create a product that sold really well in the drive-thru, but was different than what they had. And so you can innovate and iterate, or you can look at the data and start looking at flavor profiling and saying, all right, what should be selling? What does it look like? What does it taste like? And you make that. And so you can quickly identify a product that met the criteria that when it went to market, even before you put it in the market, with certainty it's going to be a home run. And in this case, it exceeded their stretch goals by triple digits.
Oh my gosh. So really what you're saying is that this whole concept of clones and orphans and product innovation, is there a correlation there between this inside out process that you were talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to look, the products in that, just say snacks, right? So you have POS data for snacks, and you say, I want to do single serve snacks, and great, dynamite. And then you're looking at, okay, how are all the single serving snacks selling, right? You can go to IRI and get that data from point of sale, right? So you've got, for the last year, every grocery store in the United States that sold a snack, and you have that, and you take the UPC code. And then you can correlate that to each of those products' flavor profile, right? And so you can plot that in the Amplify graph, but it's static, right? Until you put it in motion, right? And over time, what you start looking at is, okay, well, where are the elements in the flavor neighborhoods or sub neighborhoods? Where are they starting to come together, or where are they going apart? And you can say, okay, I see right there in that little area, there's an opportunity. All right. So what's driving that change? Well, in this instance, it may be that you have, as an example, it is a chocolate covered cookie that is dark chocolate, or a single serve chocolate covered cookie. That's what's selling. right? And you say, well, all right, well, let's look in the different categories. What are the flavor profiles that are moving with the highest velocity? Turns out that dark chocolate with sea salt items, so items that may have nothing to do with single serve. So dark chocolate with sea salt sells really well, and also sweet items that have citrus pepper flavors, but specifically citrus peppers. And so then you look at and say, well, okay, if we layer those together, how do they trend? Are they on a similar trend line, or are they on very different? And so Amplify will allow you to say, okay, if you were to have a single serve product that is a cookie that is covered in dark chocolate with sea salt and sweet pepper, which doesn't exist, but if it did, the trend line would look like this.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, it's just, again, it's solving a problem through a different way.
Now
Change the way
you're a longtime practitioner of word of mouth and social, and I'm curious, what is your thought on social? I mean, I know this is a super macro general question, but what's your thoughts on, in food and beverage, with social being such an important piece, right? How does it play into a brand success these days? Because you see all these crazy levels of social inaction, from like complete, inactivity and bullshit, to like taking pictures, that they're using for packaging and posting them with, weird dated brochure type style designs, all the way to like amazing experiences and advocates and influencers and organic and paid. Like where do you stand on all of this? How important is social in all of this?
Well, so this goes way back, and yes, I was fortunate to be one of the under members of Mouth Marketing Association, which was the early 90s. I got to, as you know, to help author the social media safe harbor guidelines that the Federal Trade Commission established and utilized. So in the very early days, we were figuring out what social was and how to do it, as you were part of too, right? And for it to scale, you had to have standards. Otherwise, it was just ad hoc. It was throwing shit against the wall. And people were doing that all day long. But when they said, hey, how do you replicate best practices in community management? Well, you have to have standards, right? So we developed all of these standards. And I recall, I believe it was Scott Monty. And Scott used to be the head of social for Ford, and it's really smart dude. And we were at an event,
and a super compassionate guy too.
Yeah, for sure. And he said, like, a lot like our mutual friend Gino Church, right? Who is also
Gino Church for president.
That's right. Yeah, a man from back in the day. But the thing that Scott said that stuck with me is your brand always precedes you, and it's involved in conversation. And this goes back to awareness must equal expectation, must equal experience. If you're creating hype that creates an unrealistic experience, or an expectation of an experience, and that experience falls short, or even it falls way above the what you expected, right? So now you have a new expectation of experience that the next time around, when it is just what it's supposed to be, isn't what it's supposed to be. It's now short of your previous expectation. So consistency there is everything, right? So for the importance of social in a brand, social allows brands to come to life in the form of personalized stories, right? Good example, Nike, just do it. Just do what? I don't know. So it would just do tennis, just do golf, just do running, right? They don't say what it is.
You can modify it for your own personal situation.
Right, because you transpose yourself into the just do it. You're not transposing, I don't transpose Duncan into my vision of just do it. I transpose me, right? As you know, I'm a competitive cyclist and I go out and ride, and every once in a while I'll see somebody that's riding, and I know, because you can see it on their face, that they're sprinting and they're daydreaming that they're Mark Cavendish crossing the line for to win the Tour de France, right? They're transposing themselves into that experience. They're not imagining it being Mark Cavendish, and they're not imagining it being their neighbor. They're imagining it being them. So it's all about them. So the brand story that gets transposed into like Scott said, gets transposed into the places where you are not, is the power of social.
I mean, it's interesting. I was just talking to a regional manager for hiring at Chick-fil-A, and I said, "Man, how is it possible that you are experiencing no downturn in your hiring?" And he looked at me right in the eye and he said, "Brand legacy, baby." He goes, "Chick-fil-A, whether you agree or not, Chick-fil-A stands for something. We treat our employees like gold. We treat the customer experience with immense respect. We train people, and we pay our employees $17 an hour." And I said, 17 an hour? Like, how the fuck does a restaurant afford 17 an hour? And they said, "Well, we're either going to keep the store open or not." And so the brand proceeds. When you think about Chick-fil-A, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm off topic here, but Chick-fil-A, that brand, like, people know what to expect. That's why that line is, who cares if they're closed on Sunday, right? That line is always full.
Right. So funny story about Chick-fil-A to that point, Duncan. My wife and I went to get vaccines. And as you know, we live in the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis, Indiana. So they held a mass vaccine at the Speedway. And it was managed by the military. Indiana National Guard managed it. And my wife and I marveled at the level of organization and efficiency, right? The one day that we went, there were probably 7,000 people there. We were in and out in 15 minutes. And the guy that was checking us in, I am just amazed at the level of efficiency of this. You guys have done a great job. Don't thank us. We're just following. What did he say? He goes, "Don't thank us. Chick-fil-A came in and set all this up for us." It was a joke. But the point was that their brand strength is so significant that he made the joke, meant it as a compliment. I got it because it was that efficient.
I mean, it's just it's amazing. You're right. And so where do you stand on? I mean, social itself is becoming sort of crowded, right? I mean, we all know that pure.
Sort of.
Pardon?
Sort of.
It's very crowded. So
it's noisy as hell.
Noisy as hell, and we know that for the platforms in some ways are defining how we can be successful. So pure organic doesn't even exist anymore, right? So we've got to integrate paid. We've got to integrate amazing storytelling. And people will complain all the time about the iOS 14 changes. This is all bullshit. There's ways to get attribution that's way longer than what Facebook is offering, right? It's just, are you a smart enough marketer to know that? But like, how do we? I guess when I think of everything you're saying, I just, there's a sort of like the assured way, right? I can inject myself with paid and I will get results. But man, if the moment I stop spending, my results drop, right? And being a word of mouth practitioner and a long-time social guy as well, like, where do you stand on that? Like, where's the value? Is it in one or all those areas?
You go to a hot restaurant. I know you're a foodie. So I went, my wife and I, so I'm going to go down a side note because I know you're a foodie. We went to see Roadrunner the other day, which is the Anthony Bourdain movie, which was interesting and extremely depressing. But I tee that up because so the side story is I got invited to go to Eric Repair's restaurant in New York, La Bernardine, with this VIP one. And so we met Eric. And while we were waiting for Eric, standing next to us at the bar was Mick Jagger and some other dude. And it's like, okay, this is really cool. And so Eric comes and takes us on a tour of the kitchen, which is a big deal, as you know, and also a tour of the wine cellar, which isn't in a cellar. It's actually up a set of stairs in like this long, narrow room. And his sommelier pulls out a bottle of wine, and we do a tasting with Eric and the sommelier and the wine cellar. And I'm thinking, okay, it doesn't get any better than this. And so we sit at table one in the corner, and we receive our appetizers at like 11:50 p.m. and the restaurant's just starting to buzz. And in between our appetizers and our entrees, we're drinking wine. Out of the kitchen walks Henry Kissinger. He has a private table in the kitchen area, and he walks past us and says, "Good evening, gentlemen. It's a wonderful evening for a nice red wine, isn't it?" And then walks on. And I'm like, holy shit, that just happened. But so imagine yourself at La Bernardine, right? A Michelin restaurant, right? You go in and what do you expect? Do you expect great food? Yeah.
I expect an amazing experience.
Aha. What? Say that again?
I expect an amazing experience.
Exactly, which is comprised of everything, right? Everything.
That's why that's why when people say it's the food that matters, I'm like, no, bullshit, it doesn't. It's like everything coming together. No. Everything from the lighting to the stories behind the food, to the wine, the way the service staff carry themselves, everything.
Yeah, it's awareness. That's the brand perception. The expectation, which is what you're talking about, and the experience, which is the delivery of that. So to your question on social, yes, we have all these tools. Yes, it's automated. Yes, it's matured, right? Like every industry matures, right? But it requires us as humans to do the things that humans do best, and that's create exceptional experiences and stories, right? And then allow the machines to do the things that machines are good at doing that we are frankly not.
So what I'm hearing you say is that great storytelling is important. Exceptional experiences are important, and how you play that out is, it's malleable, or it's you can customize that part of it, whether you're telling a great story via paid, or you're telling a great story organically. I mean, I'll tell people, with the work that Firebelly does, is we work the funnel, whether it's awareness, engagement, conversion, post-conversion, loyalty, all that stuff. There's different people in terms of influencers and advocates for that. There's different approaches for that, even within paid or organic. So what I'm hearing you saying is that the crux is how they all work together.
That's how they all work together. And some experiences are meant to be perfect, and other experiences are meant to be imperfect. So two examples that go back to the La Bernardine kitchen. It's a European kitchen. If you've ever been in a world-class busy kitchen, it is a loud, intense place where there's lots of yelling and cussing, right? And knives. There are lots of knives. So you get to see that messy-ish experience that makes the perfect even better. Or you sit in a movie theater, at the end of the movie, they're rolling all of the outtakes, and Will Ferrell's in them, so they're funny as hell, right? And everybody stays in their seat to watch the outtakes. right? The B-roll that isn't supposed to be seen, but has value. So some of the experiences should be perfect. Other experiences, show the reality of life.
That's amazing.
The reality of the brand.
So I want to say something real quick, which is I appreciate everyone listening today as we talk to Steve Hershberger from Westminster Group. And this episode is brought to you by Firebelly. At Firebelly, we make brands more likable and profitable through social media. That's all we do. And if you'd like to learn more, firebellymarketing.com, or email me, Duncan@firebellymarketing.com. So Steve, before we get into like the last salvo of questions, if people want to know more about you and what you're doing, westminsterinnovation.com.
westminsterinnovation.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn at Steve Hershberger, Hershberger.
And if you're in, especially, I mean, you could be a small firm or a huge firm, and Steve's firm can do a lot to help you. But especially if you're mid-market and you want to grow faster, efficiently, and profitably, and drive really, I think, Steve, you can really help people drive engagement. That's what I just wanted to remind people about. So westminsterinnovation.com, Steve Hershberger, if you want to know more. So Steve, what are you listening to? You are an avid biker. In fact, I would say you're more than avid. You're a rabid guy when it comes to you pushing your own personal boundaries. What do you listen to when you're biking? Do you listen to the road? Do you listen to music?
No, I always listen to music. On my right now here in the office, got my lo-fi playlist streaming. So right now is Insomnia by One Hot Drink, which is outstanding. But I just finished my new playlist for last week's ride. So I raced last week in 100-mile gravel race in 92-degree heat, and it was the hardest day thus far I've had on a bike because of the speed, and they saved all the hills to the end. But I was, I listened. What was that?
I said, bastard.
Oh, it sucked. It was terribly awesome. But my playlist for it, I always listen with one earbud, is called This Might Hurt a Bit. And on it, Harder Than You Think, Public Enemy, Burn It Down, Linkin Park, Ex-Ambassadors with Machine Gun Kelly, I Was Wrong, Social Distortion, Eminem, Everclear, Foo Fighters, Cranberries, Her, Coldplay, Raconteurs, Dorothy, Bowling for Soup, Leonard Skinner, Daughtry and Slash, Blackstone Cherry, Charm City Devils, Dropkick Murphys, Coal Chamber, POD, Hillstrom, Alien Ant Farm, and Spiderbait.
Wow, that is a very eclectic mix. Very eclectic. Where do you stand on Elvis Costello?
Oh man, I think so. To me, Elvis Costello is as important to the evolution of music as Clapton was, as Kiss was, because they all to Clash, right? So they all fit in. They have their own swim lanes as these music styles were evolving. Music, it's constantly evolving, right? So it's evolving into new forms. So indie music when we were in our 20s is not indie music today. It's different, right? And that's the way it should be. Public Enemy is different than trap rap today. And each is each on its own, or should. Sugar Hill, right? So to Elvis Costello, he gave permission to other artists to take a form of music and explore it thoroughly. And I think the key word is permission. because I think before him, his style was something that might have scared people to try.
Yeah, it's interesting. He is definitely someone. I mean, I think if you had to say, just with the limited styles of swimming there are, and you had to put Elvis Costello make him into a stroke, it's like Elvis Costello is definitely individual medley, because he's just not one stroke, it's like whether it's a good year for the Roses or Allison or, so much of the other stuff he did with the attractions. And he's just really like an immense artist. I can't say I love everything he does, but man, he's got some great stuff,
Well, but see, that's the hallmark of a great artist. If you love everything that artist does, that artist isn't stretching him or herself.
Yeah.
And there are things that, some of my favorite bands have done that I'm like, what the fuck was that? and it was them, trying something, and maybe it didn't work. Maybe there was a component in there that did. So they harvested that out and used it somewhere else. Right. But
certainly Bowie comes to mind with that.
Well, for real. I mean, even Johnny Cash. I mean, there are, the list is forever long. But it's, how do they, it's back to where we started, man, as we round out the time, it's curiosity. Right?
Well, Steve, I love the things you've said today. There's so much food for thought. And once again, if you want to get a hold of Steve or learn more about what he's doing, westminsterinnovation.com. Thanks for being such a courageous human and just winning and losing and winning again, and never giving up, and being such an inspiration to people like me. So thank you, Steve, and thank you for listening to the Firebelly Social Show, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Thanks for listening to the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.